Welcome to this episode of the podcast Relatively Famous, where I, Chip White, interview relatives of famous people. My famous relative is Vanna White of Wheel of Fortune. I think that kind of qualifies to have a podcast where you talk to relatives. And today, I'm excited that we have a hockey player's wife. Bryan Bickell's wife, Amanda, is our guest. Bryan is a Stanley Cup winner, hockey legend, and his wife has a great story. And they have an amazing family. Speaking of families, I'd like to thank our sponsor. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. Visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's my hometown area. And you know what? We used to host the Can-Am days back in the day. So Canadians used to love, and probably still do, love to come to Myrtle Beach. So if you're looking for the perfect family vacation, be sure to go to visitmyrtlebeach.com. It's 60 miles of coast, golf courses, family fun. If you happen to have an autistic child or traveler with you, be sure to check out Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock. It takes place in Myrtle Beach because Myrtle Beach is a very family-friendly, sensory-sensitive, and autistic child vacation spot. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. So that being said, let's find out about Amanda Bickell today.
Relatively Famous podcast with Chip White.
Amanda, welcome to Relatively Famous. And I'm excited to chat with you today. You sent me a little bit of notes, and what a story.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be on here. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Okay, so for our fans that might not be hockey fans, tell us a little bit about Bryan and his career, and then we're going to dive into, your life.
Yeah, because who cares about him, right? So, yes, Bryan is a hockey player. He worked his way up into the NHL. He's won 3 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks. And, unfortunately, after winning his 3rd cup, he wasn't feeling very well and ended up going downhill and got diagnosed with MS, which ended his career. But that's not where our journey ends.
Absolutely not. He also played for the Hurricanes too, which,
Yeah,
Carolina.
So exactly. That was when things were like really off and not clicking. And he had done tons and tons of tests at that point to find out what was going on with him, why he felt off and all that kind of stuff. We did a lot of things from concussion testing to vertigo, just mental stimulant stuff. We did like hypnotherapy. Like we went through all the things trying to figure out what was wrong and what had changed within that year. And couldn't figure out anything. So at that point, then he ended up getting traded to North Carolina, and he wasn't there very long before they figured it out.
Yeah, and you guys have started a foundation, which we'll get into. But let me backtrack a little bit, because as people know, I don't do a lot of research. You sent some notes, which was great, because I like to have a conversation. You guys met pretty young, right?
Yeah, we were in high school when we met. It's like one of those, people are like, what? That long? But every time I hear it, I'm like, what? That long? Really? Are you sure? Yeah, it's been a long time.
Now, high school, you grew up in Ottawa, where hockey is the sport, the king. You said you weren't really attracted to hockey players. What changed?
It's just him and his personality. And, it's not that I wasn't attracted to hockey players. Like, of course I was attracted to hockey players. They're this big, tough, manly kind of human being. but I didn't want to date a hockey player. There's a difference. I had some friends that were hockey players, and, you know, I just didn't want to be one of those girls. I don't know. I just didn't want to follow down that path. But he was different. He
What
was
what what was
different.
the attraction?
He didn't stop like following me. So everywhere I was, he turned up. Even at work, he'd sit there for hours. And he just continued to pursue and pursue. And which made me get to know him, on a friendship level. And he was just a down to earth, nice, normal guy. It was his first year in the league. He didn't really know anyone. He didn't really have any friends. So he didn't have that, like, I don't know, hockey player mentality, I guess, if you will, at that point. He was just this kid that was new to town and didn't know anyone and didn't have any friends. So I got to know, like, who he truly was. And deep down, he was just this, sweet teddy bear.
So you're in high school. What was, you're attractive and probably popular. Kind of tell me a little bit about, because you kind of sent some notes. Tell me a little bit about high school for you, because I think everybody's high school story is you're either bullied, you're the bullier, or you're just kind of out here in this group over here or this group. What was high school like for you?
Yeah, I definitely had a big mixture in high school where, like you said, there were a lot of people that thought maybe I was popular and everything like that. But the truth is that I actually was bullied pretty bad from grade 5 on. Um, I recall, and this would be high school got a little bit better, because the majority of these people actually didn't go to my high school, although I continued to get bullied from them through high school, where they tried to get people in my high school not to like me. But the hardest parts were probably between, grade 5 and 8. So much so where I remember being in grade 7 and I was surrounded by at least 20 people at lunchtime because I had left the school property. I learned quickly never to do that again. But I got surrounded by like 20 people, and some of them were who they said they were my friends. But they wouldn't stand up to these people. So I got lucky. Like, there was a mom who had their stroller and their kid in it, and they were passing by, and she came over and she was like, "No, I'm taking you with me." And she got me out of that situation. But there was a lot of moments like that, through school, sadly. I'm not 100% why, I think that I was new to the school in grade 5, and sometimes that happens, when you're a new kid that comes to the school, and I just was the one to get picked on. Um, yeah, it sucked. It sucked big time.
Okay, let's flip it. What's your fondest memory of those years? I mean, 'cause like I said, I know I have great memories. I have some not so great memories. I have some regrets. So is there a time or an event that you go, oh, well, you know what? That's the school years I want to remember. I don't want to remember the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Although I will have to say that between grade 5 and 8, there's really not much that I would ever really go back on and have any fond memories of. Like, it was pretty bad. But going into high school, things changed. I started to stand up for myself a little bit more. Things like that. And there's definitely fond memories that I have in high school. I went to a very multicultural school in Ottawa. I went to Richmond High. And um, what was it else? There's, you know, it's just, you got to see so many different things in that school and meet so many different people. And that I kind of really enjoyed. Um, I had other boyfriends and stuff through school, and I did all the fun high school stuff that most kids do, got in trouble, went to parties too early. Um, you know, didn't pay attention to my grades, all those things that you look back and you're like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I could have done some things different, obviously, but I think
You
that I
sound
had,
kind of like my could be my blood sister there. Let's get in
yeah.
trouble. Let's go to parties too early.
Yeah, I was a pretty good kid in the sense of like in the grand scheme of things, like compared to like a lot of the other kids that were around me. But it's not like I just went to school, went home and
Yeah.
did my homework, you know.
So growing up in Ottawa, what color was your childhood?
In what sense?
What when you look back on your childhood, what color was it? Oh, you
Uh
flipped on us.
oh, I'm
Oh,
so
you're back.
sorry.
You're back.
Okay. Um Brian was calling me. X that, don't worry. My childhood was, I would still say it was quite green. Like, I mean, my mom was a single mother. She did everything that she can. I still, had people that surrounded me that loved me. I still got to do a bunch of things. I feel like I was grounded my whole life. That's how it feels like as a child, but I know that that's not factual. Um, because there are lots of things that I did and got to do and all that kind of stuff. And my mom was just, like I said, a single mother protecting me. Um, but I still feel like I have so many fun stories of, I guess they're kind of like party stories though, of like in high school and things like that. But like I have some pretty ridiculous, stories like that I very fond memories of, like with some of my best friends and still best friend to this day. She actually lives in LA. And those things will never leave you. Those are core memories that will always keep with you. And so regardless of all the crap, that I went through, and which again, let me say though that even if you go through all that bullying, and I would never say that I would want to go through that again because it's horrible. And I wish that no one could go through those things. But it did always still teach me a lot of things. It still pushed me. It still pushed me to be the strong human that I am today, the resilient human that I am today. And like I can get through so much. Um, I feel like maybe those things happen to prep me for all the other things that I had to go through.
Yeah, because we'll delve into some of the way life has been since then. Now, you're a mother of two daughters. You're raised by a single mom. I have a son, and I'm 23 years clean and sober. And when he was growing up, I'm like, there is no way my kid's going to get anything past me if it with drinking and drugs, because my God, I know it. I'd look at that kid and go, man, I am clueless. As when you look back at your life and you think these things, now you got these two daughters, what's the perspective you think you might have as they get older?
Oh my God. I mean, you're 100%. I personally feel like I'm still not mature enough to have children. like, like, like I'm always like, what? How do I have two kids right now? I was like, how am I keeping them alive? But what I
Hey,
realize as we get older, that I'm not the only one that feels that way. Like we all continue to feel that way. And that's kind of mind blowing because I definitely, when I was a kid, looked at my mom as like an adult who could, was not childish, could not even imagine understanding the things I was going through or, that kind of stuff. So it's funny when you grow up and then you have children of your own, all the things that start to be like, oh yeah, I see why my mom did that. Or,
Yeah.
like, oh geez, okay. I shouldn't have done that because that's super annoying because now my kids are doing it and I'm like,
Oh, I know. I would call my dad, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry I was 5. I'm sorry I was 16." you know,
yeah, it's true.
because I agree with you in the fact, like I'm 65, and we had our son later in life. I was almost 40, and even at 40, I was definitely not mature enough. And I think back of my friends who had kids in their 20s, and if there's like, man, how did you guys do it? Or had multiple kids, and we only had one, and I was like, God, don't let me kill this one, please,
Yeah, it's true. And my mom was, she was 20 when she had me. So she was young. And then she had my brother at 30. And she used to always tell me, oh, Amanda, do not wait till 30. Have the kids in your 20s. It was so much easier in my 20s than in my 30s. And I always thought she was crazy. And then but she was right in the sense of it's just different, right? Like in your 20s, I'm not encouraging people to have kids in their 20s, but I'm saying in the 20s, like she just had that much more energy and like things to do with, wanted to do stuff with me. Where in your 30s and going into your 40s, you start to get a little bit tired. You start to be like, life is actually setting in and the stressors of life starts to come along at the same time that you're having kids. Where in your 20s you kind of don't really care about that stuff yet as much, and so you're just living and being present and being like a parent and things like that and enjoying and having fun with the kids and doing things. And in your 30s and 40s you have a real job and you have like, no, we can't go and do that. I've got to cook. I've got to clean. I've got to, those things actually start to like be more important. So I kind of look back and I mean, I didn't have my kids in my 20s. I had them in my 30s, but
yeah. I
but
think
I
it's
kind of see what she's saying.
yeah. For me it was. Luckily, when he wasn't quite 3 when I got sober, because then I was able to be present for the last 23 years of his life, for the past 23 years of his life. Had 20, I don't know if I could have been. It's definitely depends on the personality, and plus as you start hitting your 30s and 40s, and like you said, life, mortgage, everything is kind of kicking in, and it's like depression kicks in sometimes, and just how has life been for you as a mom, wife? Your husband had a crazy hectic schedule. You guys had a lot on your plate at a young age. How did you handle, I'll just call it fame, and because he's in the hockey world, man, he's huge. So what was it like in that part of your life? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Big time roller coasters, like huge. Um, a lot of excitement, then a lot of dips and depression, and then a lot of who am I and what is life, and you know, so there's a lot of that when it comes to going through like that kind of lifestyle. Because you're young. Like when we moved to the US, we moved to Virginia, and it was amazing. I was like super pumped, we're young and we're able to go out and we are living on the beach for a year, and he's playing hockey and this is super exciting. We're told to like get a place and we're like, oh my God, and you get to like go out to like a nice restaurant, and I'm like, I don't even have fancy clothes to go to a nice restaurant. I'm like 19 or 20, and things like that. But you're just like in awe of it all, really. And you're just like, wow, just living your best life. And then reality starts to hit a little bit after, when you realize like it's not all fun and games and your position can be taken and you can go back to nothing very quickly and all that kind of stuff. And you have to work quite hard. And then there's a lot of loneliness. You know, you're away from a family, you're away from your friends, you're away from everything that you know. And if you don't fully click, right away with some of the, you know, other wives or girlfriends, that can be lonely too. And, they're on the road sometimes, or if they're not on the road, they're at the rink. And I'd find myself like laying in bed until the day time, like 2 o'clock, and he'd come home, and then I'd like jump out of bed and be like, but I'd be like, why am I jumping out of bed? What else am I supposed to be doing? So I struggled a lot there. And then we struggled a lot too with, we moved from the beautiful Virginia Beach. We were only there for 1 year. And then Chicago decided to move their farm team to good old Rockford, Illinois. And although we enjoyed ourselves there, it's, when you're like, I had to leave the beach to go to Rockford, Illinois. Like, are you kidding me? But that's when like, that push to like get up into the NHL, and you're getting called up, and then you're up for a game and you're back down, and you're called up and you're back down, and you don't really know where you fit in or if you're going to get a chance. And we did that for a couple of years, and that's a struggle. Like Bryan went, through a mental struggle there where he questioned quitting. I'm just going to go play in Europe. Like, and I had to do a ton of, I constantly had to keep pushing him. I constantly had to, continue to encourage him in the summer times to like work towards getting ready for the season. Because his mind started to, be tired. He was tired mentally of like not knowing, I guess, and am I going to get my chance? And you see other guys get called up or stay there. And, it's just a mental struggle, right? So we did a lot of that. And then eventually in 2010, he got called up, and he was on the team as a black ace, but he was a main guy that they were playing. And that's when they won the first Stanley Cup, which was insane. Like it was insane. Like I don't think we slept for like 48 hours after they won the cup.
Now,
And
did
where
life
were
change
we?
for you guys after he won the cup? I mean, the struggle I get. I've known some minor league baseball players. Same thing. Get a game, and it's that same feel of am I going to make it back and forth. But now he's on the team. They've won the Stanley Cup. Did things change for you guys as a couple, or did you start feeling more purpose, so to speak? I mean, because it sounded like for a point you were like, "What is my purpose?" Right?
Mm-hmm. I did not at that point. I struggled because he was Bryan Bickell. Who am I? I was Bryan Bickell's girlfriend. That's what people would know me as. Someone would be like, "Oh, you're Bryan Bickell's girlfriend." I started to get angry. I was very angry all the time, being like, "No, I'm not Bryan Bickell's girlfriend. I am Amanda. I am Amanda, and I am cooler than Bryan Bickell." Like I was getting like so frustrated with being Bryan Bickell's girlfriend, that sometimes it did take a toll on our relationship because I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was a very strong individual, and although, and a lot of people maybe can relate to this, although I would come across very confident, I was not a confident person, but I definitely can come across as confident. I have moments of confidence. And so like the person I want to be is this confident person. And I had no idea who I was or where I was going or what my steps were. But what I did know is that I could not be Bryan Bickell's girlfriend anymore. I was like, that's just not for me.
I hear you. Yeah. Well, I got to the point though now where it's like, you know what? Hey, I'm Van West's brother. Hell, I just even got a podcast about it because it was a.
Yeah. But that's the thing though. You're taking, which is amazing, right? Because you're taking the situation and you're turning it into something that gives you purpose. And even though it came from her, like the foundation, I couldn't have grown it the way that I've grown it if it wasn't for his success.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take that away. Like I just learned how to utilize his success and turn it into something that made me whole.
Yeah. Let's talk about the foundation.
Yeah.
Tell me about it, or tell not me. Tell everybody about it.
Yeah. So it started off as for pit bull type dogs. And the reason is when Bryan and I were younger, living in Ottawa, there was this person that was like, my mom was having a yard sale and there was this guy walking past and he stopped at the yard sale and he had this cute little puppy in his arms and he was like holding it and it was like newborn. And I was like, oh my God, like I need to see that puppy. And he was like, here, you can hold it. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I like fell in love instantly. And he's like, you can have her for $200. And I was like, oh, thanks. But I was like, I had no place to have a dog. I was living with two roommates in a duplex where we were not allowed pets. And I, was working like 3 jobs because Bryan made diddly squat playing in the OHL. He made $50 a week. So he would just show up at my work and take all my money every day. Anyway. And so I was just like, oh, that's cute, but I can't. So whatever, he ends up leaving. And I was like, hey, that dog was so cute. It was so cute. And then my mom calls me probably maybe a week or 2 later. And I still was kind of talking about this puppy, but how cute it was. And she goes, so she had known, but the owner of that dog, he was into drugs and all that kind of stuff. And through those 2 weeks, I found out that he had sold off pretty well all of those puppies. And he had also cut their tails off with scissors. And he put the tails in like a little baggie and went around the neighborhood to kids and said it was like minnows. And these dogs were not nearly old enough to be away from their mother in the first place. And so like that kind of hurt my heart. And my mom calls me one day and she goes, I just saw that guy walking down the street and he definitely looks like he's fiending for some drugs. I bet you if you take $50 and knock on his door and say, take it or leave it, he'll take it. And at that point, wanting to get this dog out of that situation overpowered any of my thought process about the fact that I wasn't allowed pets or that I didn't, have the money or resources or time to be owning a dog. And so Bryan and I were on our way to the movies and we stopped by the bank, grabbed $50. We're like, well, let's see what happens. And knocked on the door. Sure enough, he said, yeah, here, you can have her. And she was so tiny. I just put her in my bag and we went to the movies because we had already bought the tickets. So, but through that time, probably like 2 months later, the pit bull ban in Ontario happened. And I was able to see the negative effects of the ban. I saw, she was kicked out of puppy classes. I had registered her in puppy classes. She was only, about 2-3 months at that point. And she was not allowed there anymore. There were vets that weren't allowed to take her. She had to be muzzled anytime she was out of the house. And anytime someone called in fear of their life, animal control would have to come to my place and they would have to assess her. And so, no word of a lie, bi-weekly, someone was at my house assessing her over and over again. And this is, she's now 6 months at this point, just this tiny puppy. And they would walk in and they would just play with her the whole time. They'd be like, I'm so sorry, we're here again. But even if if we get a call about her again, we have to come again. And it got to the point where so many people in my building were fearful because of the media and everything that was being portrayed, that I ended up getting kicked out of my building. And so I ended up having to go play another place. So I had to move 2 or 3 times because she was a pit bull. Through that, I found out a lot of family dogs were being taken and euthanized on the spot for no reason. It was a horrible time to witness if you had a pit and you got to see like what was really happening. When we moved to Chicago, I heard there was a possibility of a pit bull ban. And I said, that's it. Nope. I'm not letting that happen here because I know the negative effects. So I'm going to use, and this is where that comes into play, I'm going to use Bryan's platform. I'm going to use our platform to be able to do something good and spread positivity and educate about, these dogs. And so that's how it ended up starting.
And what's the name of the foundation?
The Bryan Amanda Bickell Foundation.
And I
Super
think,
original.
Yep. And there's a link to it in the notes, by the way, folks. We're getting close to our time. Tell me a little bit about your girls. What's it like being a mom to 2 girls? I'm a boy dad.
I used to want a boy. But now I look at them and I'm like, God, they're crazy.
That's what they say about girls.
Yeah. Girls are emotional, and I'm not looking forward to their teenage years. I'll tell you that. They're dramatic and they're girls, but they're so much fun. Like they're very close in age, which is really nice. So they get along really well. They also know how to fight really well. But I try really hard to keep them as close as possible and to respect one another, and to remember, how lucky they are to have a built-in best friend, because I know that it's going to get challenging come high school and boy time and all that nonsense.
Yeah, so not only going to have teenage challenge, with Bryan Zimash, you're going to have some other challenges too. Do you guys have kind of I don't know if the plan's the right word. I mean, how do you guys deal with it now, and what do you think that it's going to be like in the future?
Oof. It's day by day, Chip. It's day by day. I the thing with Bryan is that stress can really bring on symptoms for MS. And so I do my best to handle any and all stressful situations. So that is a lot to do with, obviously, the kids. And I'm not saying that he's not hands-on, because he is. I'm kind of a tough woman like that, being raised by a single mother. I won't let him just sit there and do nothing. But I also will take on all the stress load, because the reality is if and when sometimes I do, like, the stress topples over me and into him, you can definitely see like the negative effects that it has. And then I also have to deal with that. So I generally keep all of that and do as much as I can without him even feeling any of those effects. And I'll continue to do those things, and it'll get a little bit more stressful as they're teenagers, but he'll also have maybe a little bit more time to fish, which I think will also relieve all of his stress, because that's what he loves to do.
Yeah, but then you told him, hey, go out and buy a hockey team. There's nothing stressful about
I
that.
know. It's ADHD problems, I tell you. This just never ends. Can't seem to sit still. I can't seem to want more all the time. Anytime someone comes with me a great idea, I'm all of a sudden my mind is going and I'm like, ooh, we should build a rink. And I'm like,
So
yeah.
he's part owner of the Durham Hawks, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
where, again, my stupidity, I looked it up, but I didn't pay attention. Where are the Durham Hawks?
Yeah, so we're outside Toronto in the Durham region. So it's around where he's from, which is Orno, Ontario. And yeah.
Okay. We're at a little bit past the time. This has been awesome. What's the one question that I didn't ask you that you really wanted to talk about? Or the one question, it's kind of the same thing, that whenever you do interviews, no one ever asked me this question. I always wish they would ask this question.
Oh, geez. See, that's a question that you're asking that I have to think about, though. Um, maybe it's just, you know, people believe that, like, being the wife of a NHL player is all, rainbows and roses, and which I feel like we touched on a little bit, but I think people think that we travel with them around the world and all of that kind of stuff, and that we just live like this luxurious, beautiful, no stress life. And I wish people could understand that there's way more stress and heartache and, you know, like questioning and depression and all that kind of stuff that you have to go through and deal with, on a daily basis, not only for yourself and who am I and the perception of who you are to the public eye, which can really eat at you. But also having to manage your spouse's stress and ups and downs and continuing to push them, but also be a rock at home and all of that kind of stuff. It's truly a very hard, balance that you have to have. And it's not as easy as people think.
That's a great note to end on. My closest brush with hockey greatness was my wife's band was playing in L.A. We lived out there, and Wayne Gretzky and Janet came to the show. So we got a picture with Wayne and Janet.
Yeah, that's great. He loves his pictures.
Yeah, it was fun. She actually worked with Pat Brisson, who manages a bunch of hockey players back in the day. I mean, he still does. Anyway, just so you know, when I meet Bryan out on the street, I'm going to go, "Hey, aren't you Amanda's husband?"
Oh, it started to happen. So it definitely it puts a big smile on my face. And my biggest, I feel like, claim to fame is a few times we've been out and people have come over and said, "Bryan, like, I love you, but like I really want her autograph." And I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I tell my friends
Yeah.
next time you see Vanna, go and go, "Hey, aren't you Chip's sister?"
100%.
Hey, Amanda, thank you for your time today. This was awesome. And just, again, I appreciate your time and look forward to our paths crossing in person one day.
Same. Thanks for the chat. Loved it.
Thank you. Oh, man, I really enjoyed talking to Amanda because obviously I went over time because she's such an interesting lady. And I'm just thrilled that she was here. I want to thank you, the viewer, the listener. Without you, our podcast would be nothing. And I truly hope that you enjoyed it. And I'm humbled that you take the time to spend with us. If you are looking for the perfect family vacation, go to my hometown area. And you can start with visitmyrtlebeach.com. That's visitmyrtlebeach.com. You can go to the beach. You can play golf. You can go to the rides. There's tons of music. There's just a fun family thing to do. Tons of restaurants, family friendly. If you happen to have an autistic child or a sensory sensitive child or a traveler with you, check out Traveling the Spectrum on Peacock. It's sponsored by visitmyrtlebeach.com also, and learn more about that. And I want to thank Nelco Media, our production company, and Nelco Comics for our great location to do our podcasts. And if you happen to be related to someone famous or know someone related to someone famous, I'm always looking for guests. And you can reach me at podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com, podcastrelativelyfamous@gmail.com. Thanks.
You've been listening to Relatively Famous with Chip White. Please like and subscribe to Relatively Famous with Chip White.